I'm John. I was born in Ohio, raised in Akron, and by the time I was 10, my hometown was worn out. The Akron Art League asked Frank Lloyd Wright to come give a talk for the Akron Art League, and he showed up. He showed up and said, "Born in Ohio, raised in Akron." Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh.
That's my fault.
And so anyway, Frank Lloyd Wright said, "This is the worst town I've ever been in, and I'm never coming back." And he didn't come back. So, I was dragged through the streets of Akron, Ohio every morning because my dad would drop my two siblings off at schools that were on either end of town. And I would be in the back of the car and just, watch the world go by, all these old Victorian houses and especially all these old factories. So I think that's when I got enamored with architecture. And if I wasn't a jerk when we would go to see the relatives, my dad would let me pick the route home. So inevitably, we would go by the factories and see all the neat smoke and the sparks and stuff and go down neat alleyways and we'd make our way home. I really didn't do any clay until I got to college. I mean, it was an intro to ceramics 101, and that's when I fell in love with clay. It sounds corny, but I think most of the time the medium picks the artist. And I was just talking to a glass blower at Western Avenue Studios this morning, and he felt the same way about blowing glass. He saw a demo and he said, I just have to do that. So I've been doing clay for about 52 years, and I went from Ohio to San Antonio, and when I was in San Antonio, I started using a white clay to do the Spanish missions and the Alamo. I didn't make Alamo ashtrays, but it was a nice Alamo. So the mayor's office would use my work to give to visiting dignitaries. So there's like a bunch of fancy people that have my work. I never got to meet them, like the first George Bush, Pope John Paul II. And so, I would drive home for Thanksgiving, and you got a bunch of relatives around the table, and they go, "Well, how are things in San Antonio?" And I said, "Oh, well, the Pope just got one of my pieces of work." And then my mom would ask Uncle Jim, "Well, hey, how's that new lawnmower?" That is a direct quote. And to my parents' generation, this didn't have that much value. So, there you go.
Did you tell them how much you sell it for?
Yeah, and my dad, this is another direct quote, there's a sucker born every minute.
Oh.
If I don't mean to rag on my parents, but I would show them a new building and they go, "Oh great, another roach trap." So don't be that parent. Okay, so oh, they're going to kill me if I ever run into them again. So I moved to Vermont because I missed the Four Seasons in Texas. And I get to Vermont and it's like, look at all these buildings. They're like these barns. They look like, some are sagging but still standing up. Some are falling apart like they're, explosions. So I figured, well, I'm going to be making these things out of clay. So, I would concentrate on trying to make some barns really graceful. And the fun part is making decisions about, do I use horizontal barns or do I use vertical barns? Some barns, if you put enough stuff in them, it becomes a narrative. If you put cars and little Scotty trailer homes inside, that guys end up being attracted to it. And when my work was in the Vermont Craft Center there, they loved me because the couples would come in, the guys would go to my work, and would leave the ladies to go shopping for jewelry. That's another direct quote. So, and if you stuff the barns with things, then people try to make up a story of how that got in there, or what the story is with it.
How do you get that finish that it looks like dust on the car?
That's just the clay itself.
Oh,
So I don't glaze things because I'm too lazy and I never really figured out glaze. So now we're not advancing. There we go. You know, some barns you can get too ragged like that, and they're not as appealing, I think, as the simpler barns. There we go. And I found out that if I put 3 cupolas on the barns, they sell a lot quicker.
Really?
Yes, and I think you give them names like the Three Sisters barn, and that seems to help. But I think if you're going to spend some dough on a sculpture of a barn, the people that have the money, they don't want one that's completely trashed out. They want to feel comfortable about it. That's my interpretation. So you don't trash it out all the way. So they don't.
quick question.
Yes.
Did you ever in San Francisco do one of the Three Sisters houses in San Francisco?
No. I was in San Antonio.
Okay.
So was that the row of the Victorian houses? Yeah, that's a handsome block. Here we go. Now, if you put a lot of people don't have room for a 3-dimensional object in their house. So all my sculptures, I make them so that they can hang up on the wall. And the neat thing about hanging the artwork up on the wall is you can just play with the silhouette. You're free to roam. You don't have to have a flat bottom. And here I've got all vertical boards, which I think helps it look kind of uplifting. And then the silo is going up too, like a church steeple. So there's this relationship between height and width, and I always try to go for the height more than the width.
When it stands out from the wall like that, do you have to use special support to hold the heavy plate that's out from the wall?
No, it all gets fired. It's like hard as a dinner plate. There's just one simple nail that's hung on, or a French hook. So, I like to use French hooks because it sounds fancy.
Can you tell us what kind of clay you're using?
The brown clay is number 100 from Laguna. They call it a mid-fire stoneware. It's from cone 2 to cone 4. So I usually take it up to around 2,300 degrees. This red clay, it's a kind of a low-fire stoneware.
John, can I
also.
have you go back to the microphone, please?
Yes, you can. So this red clay here, I'm lucky that it shrinks about the same rate as the brown clay, around 12%. Because, clays shrink at different rates. So I have relatives, in-laws in New Jersey. And when Wendy and I would go to visit her folks, we would take the number 88 DeCamp bus into New York City. So there's all these neat row houses and brownstones. And I figured, what would it be like if I did 2 row houses, what I do with the barns, making them, kind of, you want to hit the, thank you, honey. So if I make the row houses wonky, would they look scary? Would they look sad? Would they look funny? But what I found out is that when you do that wonkiness to buildings like this, it evokes an emotion. And I try to key into that. If I did all my buildings straight up and down, I'm afraid they would look like a railroad village, and they would just be very static and boring, even if you loaded them up with detail. So tall. And here I'm trying to, kind of establish a relationship between the add some height. Now my kiln is about from here to here in height. So if I go real tall, I have to make this from here up like a separate piece and then epoxy it on. So it's a good way to get some height. There's the back of it. And, you know, the fire escape is a fun treat.
Do you have any aperture inside to hold the walls together while you're putting it?
No,
so
this
that
the
it
clay,
stays-
since it's a hand-building clay, it'll support itself. Once you get a corner, once you get two pieces together to make a corner, it'll support itself even when it's pretty wet, because it's a race against time. Once you start this thing, especially if it's big and you want to add on the detail, you got to work pretty quick and make sure you keep it alive. Here I'm just, piling on the detail so that even if you don't care for row houses, you might like this one because of all this cute little stuff with electric meters and wires and stuff and embedded cinder blocks. Director bought that to put in his office. And I said, aren't you worried about the homeless encampment under? No, it's, it's the way things are. But I told him, encampment along, you can just take them off. So I made it so that the homeless encampment is removable.
Oh, wow.
So, added value. So, let's see. Oh, this conglomeration of buildings is it's like about 2 feet by 2 feet. It's on a cruise ship somewhere out in the middle of the North Atlantic. Holland Cruise Lines commissioned me to do this through a conglomerate in Norway that contacts artists. Anyway, these people, they send me an email and they said, we want you to do the like a cityscape that's really big, and give us your banking account number so we can send you a deposit. I wrote back, yeah, sure. I don't know you from Adam. To $5, and the deposit shows up. It was these people were for real. I couldn't believe it. So, I tried to do a real form, and now it's like lobby art in the middle of a boat. So here I'm once again going for height. I'm trying to I'm trying to alter the height. I'm putting a pattern on one building next to a plane.
Slab for your kiln?
Yes, I mean, at this point, I don't know. I don't even know if it's fired. But it's up. See if it's working. Oh boy, this is in 3 different sections. That weighs probably altogether probably about 80 pounds. Yeah, and the nice thing is about this is that they sent somebody to pick it up, pack it, and ship it.
Wow.
That was going to be my next
Yeah, it's like that's like jackpot. And then they deposited the rest of the money after all that happened. Yes.
Have you ever had an accident where you went into the kiln or out of the kiln?
Oh.
Question, I'm hearing in the background that we're not hearing people's questions.
Oh, okay. The question: have I ever dropped anything on the way into the kiln? Yes. It was for an in-law that was flying out when I lived in Omaha. It was a house, his house in 2 parts. So I dropped one of the pieces on the way in and I duplicated it, but I fired the part that got all broken up. So that when he came to the front door, I had his, half of the house in the box, and I drop it a second time, and it's like, I mean, that was worth it. I once again added value. So then you move to Lowell, and you see all these buildings that are made out of red brick. I've never saw so many red bricks in my life, not even in Akron. So if I start doing three-dimensional mills, they're going to be too big to put a pedestal or a coffee table in your house. You just put them on the wall. And the neat thing about these wall sculptures, and especially if you want to do a mile of mills, which is a pretty significant thing in Lowell, you can just keep going on. You can just keep adding and adding and adding and adding the segments. And here, once again, I'm just trying to make the silhouette as interesting as possible, having some parts recede and some parts come out rather, and come off. This is in Enterprise Bank in their loan department. And I started doing these rundown mill buildings, and I thought someone would be offended or hurt or wouldn't appreciate me doing Lowell-type mill buildings that were trashed out. But I haven't had one complaint yet. And it gives you a nice entry into talking about Paul Tsongas and how important he was. There's a close-up. So.
Tremendous amount of detail in that.
Yeah, you got every bar stool and everything. So it's like, I tried to make it a little bit like Arthur's Paradise Diner. There's so many neat diners in Lowell. This one has running water in it. Nothing says classy like putting a fountain pump in your sculpture. The water comes down a raceway, it goes through the gatehouse, and then it just collects and keeps going back up and around. Oh, there's a close-up. And there's some turbines in through here. The water just comes down this raceway and goes back up and goes through the gatehouse and back and
So
around.
how large is that piece?
It's about like this. That's the footprint, like this and like this. And it's real heavy.
What does that weigh?
The weight of that piece is what?
Oh, thank you. The weight of that piece is about 50 pounds. Yes.
Some of these pieces have turbines in them, and they've exploded you with the turbine in these old mill buildings. How did you research those? That was a real easy thing to do. To answer your question about the turbines and everything. There's the Lowell Historical Society. You can go look at one in the national park. And being an artist, you can just make it up. So, some turbines are like horizontal and some are vertical. So I just worry about what's going to make it the most interesting to look at. So in this case, they're horizontal. And at one point, the water was supposed to be turning the turbines, but I just couldn't pull that off. So they're just epoxied into place. But you're not supposed to know that. Next. Thank you. So here's a perfectly nice mill building that somebody, it wasn't too big for him. It lives up in Belvedere. No. And for the innards and stuff, I'm just making stuff up after looking at images. A lot of the buildings that I do, if you do a real building, they're not going to have as much stuff going on. So I can just pile up the detail. So this was based on the, this is sitting up in Belvedere too. This was based on the Franco-American orphanage. They're refurbishing it. They have signs on the outside that say, "Live above it all. Luxury apartments now available." And I said, "Oh, you got to be kidding me. You can't have that up there because right down the river is a homeless encampment." So it's not exactly like the orphanage, but you get the idea, the juxtaposition of the nice new refurbished condo and the homeless people underneath. Next. So. And, I've got little like teapots in there and
Yeah.
so, I often will get an email from someone that's bought something like a month or two ago and say, hey, I found this paintbrush and a little paint can or a tire jack, or a little tool chest. So, that gives me much happiness.
You must put little Easter eggs in there.
Yeah, and I'll do typos also. Like I'll do a refrigerator and have the joints, the hinges on the wrong side, like have the handle and the hinges on the same side, so it's never going to work. So this is a machine.
At least you get the chuckle. Nobody else might get it.
Yeah, and if they never find it, I don't, it's all right. But I get the chuckle when I'm putting it together. So, the neat thing about machines is, once again, you can just make it up. You can just concentrate on making an interesting sculpture by having parts going this way, that way, in varying shapes.
What
Next.
does that machine do?
I have no idea. So here's a machine that's similar to that one. And I'm just using, you can't tell from this image, but I'm using acrylic paint to make it look rusty and, rusty like the boat. As I just slowly layer the acrylic paint up to make it look like it's disheveled or worn out.
How do you get the acrylic paint to look dull instead of shiny?
It just goes on. It goes on like that. And I'm just using a stenciling brush, so I'm just slowly adding on the color. And if you screw up, you can just paint over it. When I was in college, it was considered bad form to be painting your ceramics. But now that I'm old, I don't care. Next. Thank you. This is like an earlier machine where I was keeping things monochromatic, and I would add real things like a meter and the vacuum tubes. But as I was talking about this with you guys before, nobody knows what a vacuum tube is anymore. So I've stopped using vacuum tubes, and I found out that if the whole machine is 100% clay, that adds value, because people will say, well, no, that bolt, that's metal. I said, no, it's clay. And you have these arguments. You're the guy that made it, and you're having arguments with the people. I took a machine in the Concord Art Society, and like the stewards or the guys that were helping, they went and got a magnet because they didn't believe me.
Oh, wow.
So that was a nice moment for me. The nice thing about these older style machines is finding these antique nameplates and things like adding machine buttons, and using garden.
Sprinkler?
Thank you.
Spigot.
Spigots. Yes, sounds like two syllables. Yes. And here, I've drilled up through the bottom of the vacuum tube, and I've stuck an LED up there, and you run it by the meter, and the color circuit in the LED light is going through these different colors, and it makes the needle in here, go up and down, and it's just based on like 2 AA batteries. That's fun to do, but there's so much value in being able to say, no, it's 100% clay, that I just keep doing it that way. And there's another vacuum tube, and you can just, make things up. I have no idea what that machine does. There's a chrome piece off an old Frigidaire. This movie projector, I was going through a steampunk phase, and I was wondering what would be the thing least likely to be made that would be run by steam. And I figured, well, a movie projector. So,
Have you been in steampunk events?
yes, I have. I went to a steampunk event in Fitchburg, and with a lot of cute little wonderfully priced steampunk type sculptures. But steampunk is so based on cosplay that I didn't sell a thing because it didn't have that value that was important to those people. And I completely got it because it was more interesting to walk around in costume and do the whole steampunk thing. They didn't, they weren't interested in objects. It was really interesting. So, and well, you know who that is, and it's like, E for effort for his robots. It's like Lawrence Welk would just use the same crummy props and just like turn them around. It's like I'm disappointed in Alfred here. But anyway, so I figured, people respond to the human form. Why not do robots? Because people respond to the face and the torso and everything. So I started making robots. And that's the first life-size robot. I kind of was looking at the Michelangelo's David, where he's standing like that. That was the inspiration, believe it or not. And, it's got the vacuum tubes and a little meter that goes back and forth. And this robot is in Anchorage, Alaska. It went by truck and then by barge, and then it's tethered, it's wired to their wall in Anchorage, Alaska, in case of an earthquake.
Wow.
So he comes apart at the waist, his head comes off, and the arms come out. So he wasn't as hard to ship as you would think. Yeah, sometimes the robots go bad. And I tried to, kind of smooth out his rough edges by giving him a partner.
That's supposed to be Wendy?
Oh, no. But, oops, go back. Oh, can you go back, honey? Thank you. Okay, there. I really wanted to do a female robot just to do the calves, because that is such a gorgeous part. So I got the calves in.
And the Kirby vacuum cleaner.
It was fun finding the Kirby vacuum cleaner on the eBay next. Okay, so, things happen. And that's little Nemo. He's at the bottom of Lake Champlain because the floaty thing just didn't work at all. And there's Aunt Helen. There's always one in every family. I found in a secondhand store, it had the beauty salon thing, with the dryer. So I just had to put somebody in there. Yeah, trouble. And this was for a robot show in Maynard, and those, you can't tell, but the legs and the arms are made out of plastic vacuum tube hoses. So I hung the torsos on the wall and then just, let the plastic tubing go down to the feet and then up to the arms. This guy enjoys mowing lawns as much as I do. He's passed away. A 6-year-old tried to climb him when he was in the Vermont Frog Hollow. And the neat part was he's like all in pieces on the floor, and his head ended up right in the top of the pile. It was the same expression. It didn't change. There's a bunch of them together. And this is from the Shelburne Art Museum. There I found an old crate box and figured out how to put a robot in there. It's another domestic couple. This is more like doll size like that. This one has a Barbie wig on it. It was fun. I would go on eBay and Google Barbie wigs, and there you go. You got a little pooch. Did anybody ever have a Kelvinator refrigerator in college? So that's a badge off a Kelvinator refrigerator. The eyes are from Van Dyke's Taxidermy up in South Dakota.
Oh, wow.
I think those are marlin eyes. And this, got the big brain on Bob. So those are alligator eyes from the same place. This guy needs dental work. The person that bought this one said he would keep up with the dental work, which was a nice touch. But you know, when you do goofy things like this, you can easily open up a conversation when somebody comes into your studio. It's a whole wall of robots. Next, honey. That's Alphabot. He's the first one that I did that wasn't a life size. And he's got a heart and arteries and stuff.
How many tons of clay have you gone through?
52 years, I would say a lot. The brown clay that I use now, I have to order it a pallet at a time now. And that's 2,000 pounds.
Wow.
So, but you know, it's up to like 80 cents a pound. But every bit of it is recyclable if you don't fire it.
But where can you store it?
Well, luckily the distributor stores it for me.
You're kidding.
No, it's up in Rutland, Vermont Ceramic Supply. And I just go up and get like 500 pounds at a time. So I have a really good relationship with them.
Wow.
Darn it. Okay. So now we're into pedal cars. This poor guy has a pedal car that runs with the rods. If you had a good pedal car, it was chain driven. So the thing about pedal cars is, like, when you're a kid, you turn that pedal car into a real car. And now that, like, you're an adult, a lot of adults turn their car into a toy. So I'm finding pedal car bodies on the eBay and doing the mechanicals out of clay underneath them. And the neat thing about clay is I just really try to exploit what you can do with clay, like making the tires look like they're flat, putting the tire together when the clay's really soft. And when the tread part, it's a long strip, and I'll take a bicycle tire and roll that over the strip of clay to get that texture in. And just winding up the clay so it's got nice, graceful curves in the fan belt and everything. This body I had to bid against a bunch of people for that car body in that condition. It's pre-World War II. And a lot of pedal cars got recycled for the war effort. So this body got up to like close to $175 in that condition, but it was perfect. It was perfect for what I wanted to do because it already looks like a sculpture.
So who buys these? Car enthusiasts or?
Usually business people.
Okay.
That's been my experience for high-priced things. Cause they're used to writing the big checks. It doesn't faze them. So this was a university professor at Middlebury College.
Okay. I didn't know if it was a business person who puts it in the showroom or something like that.
Uh-huh. Yep. That's a private person. And with this one, it's got a really nice interior. Wendy? So you do the insides too, and the scratchy material that, the seats were made of back then, and the darn springs. So this, as you can tell, it has a glove compartment. And when I would do arts and crafts shows, I would, I thought I was so clever. I'd take a plastic bag, a baggie, and fill it with oregano, and just stuff it up inside the dashboard. And not so that it's obvious, but you'd have to, you'd really have to look for it. But once somebody found it, it was like, And this was before we had so many dispensaries, or any dispensaries. So.
That was your way of transporting drugs.
Yes, it's just oregano, officer. So once again, hang it on the wall, and you can just drip things down the wall all you want. And some I tried not to trash up, just try to be more graceful, like the face of this car. That one kind of looks like a frog.
Yeah, it does.
And then one with the rear end. Hang them in groups. Next, honey. It's an old tricycle from the 30s. I tried to make that look steampunk. A Vespa scooter. Pedal tractor, that had chain drive. I think all the pedal tractors had chain drive. So I figured, I live near the coast now that I live in Lowell. We've lived in Lowell for 7 years. So let's exploit the fact that I'm near the coast. So I've always loved tramp steamers and ghost ships, like the tramp steamer that is in King Kong. That's a good old boat. So next. So that's when I started making boats. This is a real early boat. It kind of looks like a baked potato. So there's a learning curve going on. No, I put the supports on just as an added element for the sculpture. It looks like it's got legs. It gives you an opportunity to, load up the detail, like cinder blocks and old tires and little metal braces that hold the braces. And there's also wooden boats, and I can exploit the fact that I can get a nice wood texture in with this clay. And here, next one, here I'm getting a little historical by putting a steam engine in the back. And paddle wheels on the sides. The curlicue stuff right here, the Baroque-ish type stuff, comes from details from a dollhouse supply company where you buy all the Fruly fireplace stuff and the trim. So what I'll do is I'll take this like Baroque type trim, and it's in plastic. I'll pour plaster over it and then use that as a mold to do that fancy stuff.
How many hours does it take you to build one of these?
The smart aleck answer I'm supposed to give you is all my life. But a boat like that's about 3 days. Because, I know if I don't play too much backgammon on the internet. So, but you just get really efficient when you've been doing it for so long. You just know what's going to work. Next. And sometimes you don't have to give all the information. Here, I tried to make it look like it was sinking into the water.
Has anyone ever approached you to make kind of a dark stop-action film with things?
No, but I had somebody take one of my barns, and they took photographs of it from all sides, and they made a stop-gap film of it walking through a cornfield.
Wow.
Creepy. I'm delicate. And there's more of that fancy gilded stuff. And that's just cheap acrylic gold paint from Michael's. And here I'm using the system that I use to build barns. you build a wall, and then you cut out the negative spaces, and you leave the beams, and then add the strips of clay on. But I've sold a lot of boats out in Provincetown, out at the end of the Cape. This boat went to England. They paid $800 to have it shipped over there. And that came out of the gallery out on the Cape. And this is another one just as big. It's about 3 feet long, but I tried to tone down the mass. This is a painting by Edward Hopper. I expected more out of Edward. But I mean, look at this. What's going on here? So anyway, sorry. And, lobster shacks, I just, do I add color to the buoys or not? So that one doesn't have any color, and I can't figure out which one I like best. So 17 years ago, we went to Italy for our 10th anniversary. It was a Rick Steves tour. It was, just only 20 people. And we saw all these small towns in Italy. And a lot of them were the hill towns. I mean, we were in one hill town. We were playing cards at midnight in the middle of the town center, and they've got this 8-year-old kid ferrying drinks back and forth from the bar to the. It was great. And here, all these nooks and crannies in the hill towns, and all these textures that are just perfect for clay. So I had a show at the Concord. There was a 2-person show. We drew lots who was going to get the stairway, and nobody wanted the stairway because it just, it's complicated. But I lost, but I found a way to make it play to my advantage. So I figured, well, I'll just do a hill town. And the neat thing is that, you can, it works as a group, or, people can buy individual pieces there too. And inside are some religious symbols that are decals that I have made up. There's this company, you send them an image, they don't use ink, they use glaze. And it's a decal that you just wet, you slide onto the clay, and then you fire it. And that glaze, it's on there permanently. And here, once again, I'm trying to make an interesting silhouette and having negative shapes and different textures. Oops. Is that me or you? Okay, you. And if you're walking around these hill towns in Italy, this is a real little nook. You walk up a stairway and you'll see these little shrines. So I tried to incorporate, there's one right in there, that's a Holy Family decal. Next. So now we get to mid-century modern, and Aunt Helen was one of the first in my immediate family to start buying Danish modern furniture and those one-piece fiberglass chairs. And as a kid, I thought it was really creepy, but now as an adult, it's so nice. The boomerang-shaped coffee tables, and just those patterns that are in the kitchen table countertops. So I had a show out at Palm Springs, which is famous for having mid-century modern homes. And just working with, I don't know if you can see it, there's like a cat theme, there's a cat decoration on the wall, and fireplaces that are off-center. Mid-century modern restaurants where, the thing was you bring you bring the outside in, bringing the stonework texture, you also bring it into the lobby, and people would do that in their homes also. And with the mid-century modern, ethos that there would be a lot of automatic things. I remember buttons on the electric ranges instead of knobs. So here we have the vignettes that I've been working on lately. And once again, with the decals, I send the image into this company and they send it back to me using glaze. Oops, can you go back? What's going on? Yeah, go back. Thank you. So I send them an image like that and they give me a decal that's made out of glaze. Next. Thank you. And this is, remember gravel art? That's all made of those little pieces of colored gravel. So, and for the TVs, I'm looking up, old cartoons that we would watch on Saturday morning, and, I'll trim that so that it fits inside a little TV. And there's there's a big segment of the population that has never seen a please stand by thing. So, but, I don't care. Next. Here's some more. There's the cat again and the fabric and the mother-in-law plants. Okay. And, for the background, I'm just using those amoeba shapes that you would find in the kitchen tables and the countertops. And, I get to use, paintings by some of my favorite artists when I'm doing this, because I'm the one doing it. Next. So this is the first building I ever made in Ceramics 101, and it now sits with the grandsons in their sandbox out in Groton. So this is a miscellaneous section here. We're almost done. It's just a real tall slum. It's kind of absorbed the church, and on the other walls is like a post office and a bank. And once again, you don't have to give all the information. Sometimes if you just give parts of things, people will finish it in their head. Factory, I'm just going tall. This amusement park is the first amusement park I ever did, and it sits a couple of blocks away from Coney Island. The people that owned the skee ball concession bought this, and I had to double park to drop it off. It was the only time I've ever double parked in my life, and it was just nerve-wracking. Oh. Next. So hang it on the wall, and you can make things just nice and graceful. And for the amusement parks, I use the roller coaster to tie everything in together. This one's about 14 feet wide. So, you can just keep going and going and going like a mile of mills. This is what happens if you try to fire something that's not dry. It's a dashboard. I would hide oregano up in that glove box too. Next. And this is like a table, a tool chest table. Next. And everything's being able to say it's 100% clay. It's just fun to say. Next. And lastly is an Airbnb in Vermont. So, all right. So, oh no, keep going. Yeah, there's there's more. All right, so to make the brick texture on the walls, sometimes I'll use a ruler and a pin tool to make all the horizontal lines, and then go back with a screwdriver and make the little brick lines. Here's a pattern I made for mill buildings that have, you're using, big sheets of clay there and big walls. So I spent 3 days and drew about 6,000 bricks on the slab of clay, poured 2-part epoxy on it and let it set up, and then took the clay away. And so I'm left with this negative pattern. One can buy commercially made patterns, but they're so perfect, they're dead in the water. You look at something and it's just like, you can't figure what's going on, but it's just sleepy. People are paying for handmade things, and I feel guilty enough, using the pattern, even though I made it. Next. A small extruder, you can change the dies on the end to get different shapes. And that's the big one that's often used in animal husbandry. I'm not making that up. It's true. Next. Here I'm just placing bolts over the clay slab, pressing down a little bit, and you can see right here where the clay is kind of pushed up in the negative space, and it makes it look like there's a shaft there. Here I'm putting threads on screws. When I would do shows, there'd be engineers that would come up and tell me the threads on your screws are backwards. Because I would use, a right-handed screw, but they would come out left-handed, and nobody uses left-handed screws. So I found out that you can go to the hardware store and get screws that are left-handed. They use them, like this guy, they use them in swing sets. So the bolts or something doesn't undo itself. So. Here I'm going on the internet and to find patterns for my my gears. You can choose how many teeth in your gear and the angles and stuff. Print it out, and I'll use that to trace over the clay slab to cut out the gears. And here's the the dollhouse detail that I was telling you about. So there you can see that I've made the plaster mold right there. So whenever I need these guys, I just push it into the mold. And there's a large industrial extruder. Here I've made a box. I'm making a row house, and I've put the horizontal lines first, and I'll go back in and do the vertical lines to make the bricks. But I'm just basically decorating a box, cutting out the windows, adding curtains from behind, using the extruder to add the columns and other details.
Quick question.
Yes.
You're putting the two walls together on the corner,
Yeah.
and when you pinch them together, do you worry about getting a bubble in there that would explode in the
No, because I'm just, if you do catch any air, it's not going to be that big. And there's some people that argue that, if it's dry enough and you fire it slow enough, a bubble isn't going to blow it up. I don't know about that. Because sometimes I'll forget for a silo, maybe once every 3 years, I'll forget to poke a hole in a silo on a barn, and it blows up.
Is that airtight?
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, because it was dry. But that one piece you saw all broken up, there was no air bubbles there. It was too wet, and you can tell how it flaked when it broke apart.
So once you create a piece, how long do you have to wait before you fire?
Well, you probably have to wait at least a couple of weeks, but I wait longer because I have so much time into it. I'm not going to be in a hurry, So I'll let it dry for like 3 weeks, maybe a month, and then I'll put a box fan on it overnight, just to make sure that every bit of moisture is out of it that I can get out. And then I fire it really slow because, I'm paying $27 a month surcharge because I have an electric kiln, but they don't care how many times I fire it. So, and I figure it's about $27 to fire it once.
And how long does it take to fire?
I fight the juice is on about 12 hours, and then it cools off for another 12 hours. And I have an exhaust fan that sucks the air out of the bottom and then out through the window. You have to exhaust it. And here I'm rolling out a slab to make a barn. I'm slipping and scoring the two walls where they go together, and I've cut at a 45-degree angle. That increases the surface area that the clay is going to touch. And here I'm running up a seam. Once I've joined the corner together, I'm joining the seam with another piece of clay.
What's that tool in your hand for the seam? That round wheel or something?
As a clay.
Oh, that's the
Oh, that's clay. Yeah, that's clay. That's a strip of clay. Next. And, for the barns, I used to be, when I was young, I wanted to be authentic, so I'd cut out every single beam and put all the beams together. and you're just asking for trouble at every intersection, because the clay is like, it's all shrinking, it's getting smaller, and it's pulling away from each other. So it just finally dawned on me, just take, one slab of clay, cut out the negative spaces and leave the beam, so it's technically one piece of clay. So it's real strong. Next. And here I'm extruding the boards out of the big extruder. Next, please. And there's the boards getting put across. Next. And, if for the interior walls of the barns, I got to cut out those spaces before I keep adding on more and more walls. Next. And here I'm just worrying about making a nice, graceful sculpture. And then I just cut the boards up really, really short to make the roof shingles. But the roof shingles all go on one by one. There's no other way to do it. So I'm sitting in my studio. I've got oxygen, shelter, music, food. So it's kind of meditative. It's not hard. It just takes a long time. I never answered your question how long it takes, did I? Like for a barn like that, that's about 36 hours. The boats are about 3 days.
Wow, that's faster than I thought, yeah.
The mid-century modern, they're about, I could do 3 a day of those.
How
So-
long does it take you to make that little bicycle, the detail on the bicycle?
It's about 20 minutes if everything goes right. Yeah, it's fun, thank goodness I don't have to make any spokes. That would be
But
impossible.
this is after doing it for years and years and
Yeah.
years. If we
Yeah.
tried it, it would be,
Well, yeah, but if I tried to,
Years and years and
if I
years,
tried to
yeah.
do your job, it would take years and years and years to do what you're doing right there. So, well, that's it. Would you like, should I demonstrate some of this? Should I brought some clay, and, if your attention span is still around, you could even come up here and play with the clay too. But this is important. This is the junk drawer. Oops, this is the junk drawer. And there is so many things that will work that come out of the junk drawer. This little toy, the tires, will put a pattern on curtains. Or like the sleep sofas that have like the bulletproof fabric. Oh, this works well for that. Here's the cookie cutter for the lobster sign. This is a little roller from one of Wendy's paint things where you put your tube of paint to get
Squeeze it out.
to squeeze it out.
yeah.
And it, you can squeeze it out. But I use this to make corrugated metal roofing.
Ingenious.
Oh, there's the left-handed bolt. I'll use this to do rounded type screws for the machines. The vacuum tube, a fish eye, beads that you can press into the thin clay to make it look like carpet, or once again, curtains. These kind of keys I can use to do the grills on the front of the cars. Toothbrush, there's a bowl. Little license plates. These came in cereal boxes at one time. They were premium, so you get these for free. So, get all 50 shades. A rock protector.
So to get the license plate to read the right way, you put it in the plaster mold and then you put the clay in the plaster?
No, I just use I just put this right on the car.
Okay.
Because for the pedal cars, I'm using the actual metal body, and I'm adding the clay mechanical parts. So,
Like Carrot Top's chest.
yes. Should I? your attention span? I mean, I can slip and score and put up some walls and cut some stuff out, or you could come up
That'd be
here.
fun, yeah. That'd be fun.
But you know, if you want to skedaddle, I won't go.
Are you you're gonna work at the table, so we'll come down and change the mic? Yes, please. Okay, Dan. Why don't we take the tablecloth off that?
Thank you, John.
Should we put the table down on the floor maybe?
Yeah.
Easier for us to see better picture.
No, I don't. Pull up a chair closer. The way the cameras are, we want the camera to get the table.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that before. I appreciate learning about this.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine. That's perfect, actually. Ooh, thank you.
So how thick is that clay?
How thick is it?
Quarter of an inch?
It's about 3/8, maybe a half inch.
Okay.
And you can tell it's pretty wet. But there's so much fine grog in it that it's nice and
You
sturdy.
can hear the slap of it when you throw it.
John, the pebble car kid, was that just a random picture?
Yes. Yeah, got it off the,
I was hoping it was you.
No, I never had a pedal car as a kid.
glad you never had one and lived a great money.
But you definitely wanted one.
So here I'm going to join these two slabs together, and I'm cutting the edges at a 45-degree angle. And that increases the surface area. You would think a butt fit, like from there to there, would be enough, and usually it is, but this just increases your odds when you put that angle in there. Here I'm scoring it. Now I'm going to add the slip, which is just clay with a lot of water.
So there is dissolved clay in that, correct?
Yes, this is the same clay, but just a whole lot of water added to it. And now it's going to end up, even though it's wet, it's going to support itself because it's basically a triangle. And here, you know, what you then you join the surface, the corner together by doing this, scoring it. And now I will I will score this piece of clay and put it in the corner.
So that's your reinforcement.
Yes. There's a lot of times that I don't bother with that because I'm a trained professional and I know that it's gonna be strong enough. But for educational purposes, it's just good to, tell people to do it.
Okay.
Okay, now, if you can just pretend that this is a barn, you can, let's just cut the roof at an angle, and now I'm gonna cut the negative spaces and just leave the beams. And this piece is gonna be recyclable. It'll show up in something in, I don't know, maybe 10, 20, maybe 2 years from now, I don't know.
So can you reconstitute the clay once it starts to dry out?
Yeah, in fact, it's better to let the clay dry out all the way and then put it in the water. And then it revitalizes. So, and I will use this tool to put the wood grain on all the beams. So if you look inside the barn, you're going to see a wood grain. So it'll look authentic. This is way too thick. If I wasn't, trying to do this before you fall asleep, I would be a bit more accurate. But I worry about people's attention spans.
Do you ever use like cookie cutters or?
Yes. Yeah. I'll use like a rectangular cookie cutter. The trouble is, though, it's a lot of times it's too perfect. It's better just
Freehand it?
just freehand it because it'll look more
Arts and crafts.
more authentic. So here's this guy, and it has dies. It's different dies that you can do. This die I use for I-beams. It's the letter H, and I just took some soft roofing copper and pounded a screwdriver in it. So whenever I need like an I-beam for a railroad bridge, that's what I use.
You have to soften up the clay to stick it into the extruder.
No, you would think, well, maybe I should wet this clay. Well, oh, here we go. Whew. All right.
Your toolbox.
And I'm just putting the dye in there. And I'm pretty sure this got some really soft clay in here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the Play-Dohs have that like old children's store that would be the present movies.
Yeah,
You just made that and it's used for bigger version, right?
I've used Play-Doh stuff before.
That's where you probably got the idea for the bigger, where it's like bigger pieces.
Probably. Okay, so, c'est la vie. So maybe that clay is a little bit
Too dry.
too dry. But if you can just imagine, the slots of clay that I would put across there.
Is that how you make your columns on the porches, or is that just rolled ply?
Oh, this is, I'll use a die like this, or a round one to do the round columns. So,
For a brick texture, so on, I can use this and roll it up the clay. And then go in with a little screwdriver and do.
Oh, my gosh.
So, oh, and then what you do, you try to make it perfect, but you can't.
How many thousands of those in one building?
Wow, I've done so many of those. So then what you do, you want to give the impression that these are all individual bricks. So you take an X-Acto knife and you just cut through some of them.
Wow.
I'm doing this way too fast. And then you push out from behind.
The relief, now you're getting 3D relief. Wow.
Yeah, and then you'll maybe cut some really small ones and just lay them in there individual. So, you know, Wendy taught high school ceramics for 40 years. To me, that would take patience.
Teaching high school, anything takes patience.
Yeah, or, not to mention like junior high.
Nerves.
Uh-huh. You know, we have these wheels that you can buy that you roll on the clay and it puts the texture in. I use those a lot for architectural detailing. It's just like any ceramic supply store, like Bailey's. Yeah, you can. Yeah, they have them in all these different patterns. Bailey's has them. Portland Pottery, and they have a office in Braintree, Mass. So they're close. I think even Blix has these. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, there's kind of like a wave shape. You know, that's from the toy truck. So, any questions?
Yeah, it's fun. It's
Good. It's really fun being older than dirt and having all these skills. So it's just fun to tell you about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all I do.
Okay, thank you.